2015 Harbor Commission meeting to order. Welcome, everyone. We're going to start with roll call.
Commissioner Bernardo, Commissioner David. Here. Commissioner Matoush, Commissioner Caravano.
Here.
President Brennan.
Here. And we have public comment. Let's see if we have anybody. No. Okay. So I wanted to mention that, just as an update for everyone, that on April 15th, from 1:30 p.m. to 5:30 p.m., there's going to be a budget workshop held at the Oyster Point Marina Yacht Club, and the public is invited to attend the budget workshop. Next, we have staff recognition.
I'd like to recognize the administrative staff. I took a few days off during probably a critical time for doing the agendas and a few other calls and activities that went on. And I'd like to recognize Debbie Nixon, Deborah Galarza, David Doyle, and Belinda Cruz for what they did and how they kept up with everything. And we're already a little bit low on staff there, and then I took some time off, and I really appreciate them handling things while I was out.
Thank you. Next, we have the consent calendar, and we've got item 1, minutes of special meeting February 18th, 2015. Item 2, minutes of meeting February 18th, 2015. Item 3, application for public members appointed to committees. Does anyone want to pull anything off consent?
Motion to approve the consent calendar.
Second. Roll call.
Commissioner Bernardo, Commissioner David.
Aye.
Commissioner Matoush, Commissioner Caravano.
Aye.
President Brennan.
Aye. I just wanted to make one comment, which is I'm hoping that the applications for committees will be put on the district's website. So if the public wants to apply to be on a Harbor District Standing Committee, they can do so. And hopefully our site will be updated soon with those applications. So next we have new business. We have a presentation from LAFCO. Is Martha here?
Maybe stuck in traffic.
Okay.
Maybe we can come back to that one.
So we'll move on. Going to go to item 5, which is immediate technology procurement. We have a report from Deborah Galarza, who is not with us tonight. Does anyone else want to give the report?
The staff basically have a presentation tonight from our IT representative that has worked for the district. And the procurement recommendation we can come back to after the presentation, if that would be okay with the board.
Okay, let's have the presentation.
You have to stand over at the
Right
X.
where the X is.
Then yes. Sorry. First time doing this. So basically what we got is because of the time constraints on the move, and also the fact that right now we have a wireless bridge that is communicating between the plaza and Oyster Point Marina. We have there's some things that need to be purchased. Primarily, I think what we're looking at mostly is the firewalls, and the firewalls, there are several different, I've come in with several different options. What had happened was that the decision was made to purchase the Palo Alto Networks firewalls, and then the decision was made not to purchase the Palo Alto Networks firewalls. The presentation was made by the representative from Palo Alto Networks, Tiffany, who can't be here tonight, unfortunately. She was supposed to be here tonight, but she can't be here tonight. So rather than
Wait, I just have a quick question. So you said a presentation was already made once before? Or?
Yeah, we made it, or she made it just to Marietta, was at that point who was making the decision to purchase the firewalls. That was at that point.
So Tiffany, who works for Palo
Palo
Alto?
Alto Networks, yeah.
She made a presentation.
Actually, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was just trying to get clear on that. You answered, thanks.
Yeah, she was, I actually reached out to 3 different vendors at that point. I reached out to Cisco, Fortinet, and Palo Alto Networks, and the only one who responded was Palo Alto Networks. And they came back with a presentation that talked about the technology and their firewalls and how it was, superior to the technology and the other devices in the pool. So at that point,
When you say reached out, what does that mean exactly?
I called them. I said,
Oh,
hey, I'm calling on behalf of the Harbor District, and I want to know if you'll, come out and give me a presentation on your firewalls. And I emailed and called those 3 vendors, and only one responded, and that was Palo Alto Networks. But that doesn't necessarily mean that, we're stuck with, we don't have to buy the Palo Alto Networks. The Palo Alto Networks they're top of the Gartner curve. They have advanced threat protection. They have URL filtering. They have different technologies that will protect the Harbor District. And now that we're extending the wireless to the tenants and the tenants and the guests of the district, protection is kind of of paramount importance. Even though that wireless network is completely isolated from the regular network, one of the things that we did when we originally set it up was we had a lot of time to think about the way that we were going to word the disclaimer when you first log into the wireless network, because the potential exists for somebody to say, come with their laptop to the district or say somebody who's living on board a boat that's there says, my system was infected because your wireless network isn't protected. So in order to protect ourselves from not only our own computers and our own internal network from being infected, but also to prevent any sort of litigation from people who are outside, people who are guests on the network to be affected. That was one of the reasons why we updated, why we had decided rather than just purchase one additional firewall, we need to purchase one firewall for the Oyster Point Marina location, because otherwise when we move, Oyster Point won't be able to talk to the servers anymore. And they won't be able to run marina billings, they won't be able to access centralized files off the server, so we need to purchase at least one. Now, the network firewalls that we have in place are firewalls by Checkpoint, and Checkpoint has been extremely difficult to get a hold of as far as from a support perspective. If I need help configuring the units, they've been really difficult to get a hold of, so it was kind of decided at that point that perhaps the entire network needed an overhaul. And the funny thing about it is actually Checkpoint kind of agreed, because the devices that we have are old, they're out of support, and when I contacted them, because also one of the things that we have not kept up with the support contract for Checkpoint, because they weren't really helping us anyway, so it was like throwing money in a fire, so we decided not to pay it anymore. So now those devices are out of support, the networks were working, the connection between Pillar Point Harbor and the plaza is working fine. It's been established, we were able to get that going. Now that we need to add a third
But just
location.
one little quick question. Are the firewalls currently working, or did we
Yes.
check them?
No, they're currently working.
Oh, okay.
Otherwise, there wouldn't be any communication link between Pillar Point Harbor and the servers at the plaza.
Okay.
And even though Pillar Point has their own servers and they have their own little file sharing network, they also access they access the Oyster Point Marina Billings program, which is housed at the plaza, and then Oyster Point also accesses the Pillar Point Marina Billings program, which is located at the Pillar Point Harbor location. So the network link is primarily for that Marina Billings application, as well as file sharing and any other sort of network communication that needs to go on there.
So the main application that's shared is between when you say the plaza, I don't think anybody knows
Right,
what you mean.
Administrative office.
So that's okay. So the administrative office is where the main server is located, right?
Correct.
And then from there, we have the Marina Billings, where we have the finance department. And then we have bookkeeper people at each of the harbor master's offices who also use the Marina Billings software. Okay, so the purpose of the firewall is mainly to connect the Marina Billings software. I'm just trying to understand this. And then also for file sharing and things like that.
And to protect you from intruders from the outside. So even though we don't currently pay for support on that, there's still, modicum of protection from the outside world because it is a firewall, even though you don't pay support on it. The support agreement specifically itself is just in case the firewalls don't work anymore, you get them replaced within a certain amount of time rather than having to go out and buy new ones, because it does take a while to get new ones. So the thing is what we do have, we have a central authorization and authentication server at the administrative office. And then we also have a satellite authentication and security server at the Pillar Point Harbor location.
Is there a difference?
Those two talk to each other.
Are they the same servers? Or
They're not the same server.
They're two different brands?
Well, I think they're both Dells. I mean, they're virtual servers, so they're not actual physical boxes. They're both virtual servers.
What does that mean, virtual?
Okay, so a physical server means that you have one piece of hardware, like a box, that's a computer that does one thing. And a virtual server means you can take that one box and then you can put more than one server doing more than one thing on one physical piece of hardware. And it's actually, it was kind of future thinking back when they did it, which was even before I was brought on board. There are products out there right now that are very popular. Before, back in the 90s, you had one server that would perform 25 different tasks. And if that one server went down, basically you were done, you're dead in the water. Now people tend to virtualize servers, so rather than having, like for instance, in the case of the Harbor District, you would have one server that did both marina billing for Pillar Point and marina billing for Oyster Point. Now you have one box, but it has 3 servers on it. One is the authentication server, which controls file access and who has access to what, and logins and passwords and that sort of stuff. And then you have 2 other virtual servers, one for marina billings for Oyster Point and one for marina billings for Pillar Point. So if one of those virtual servers, decides to have a problem, software or hardware, then that doesn't prevent the other 2 from operating independently of that. And you actually have 2 physical servers, 2 actual boxes, computers, one at the admin office and one at Pillar Point Harbor. And on each of those, there are 2 virtual machines. There is a virtual machine for the authentication and security, basically logouts, passwords, that sort of stuff. And then there's also another virtual server for marina billing. And from what I understand, the reason why the marina billing was put on a virtual server was because back when they first got marina billings, it was really slow, and someone from the admin office tried to access the marina billing at the Pillar Point location. It was just really slow. So what they did was, instead of installing the program on the server and then having you run it on your workstation, they installed what's called a terminal server. And the terminal server, when they run marina billing, basically logs into that terminal server. So instead of transferring all the data back and forth between the 2 locations over a relatively slow link, you just log into that machine, which is then located there, and then you access the data that's locally on the machine rather than transferring all the data back and forth. It's a quicker way of doing things, and that happened once again before I was there. But I have moved the data around before. It was kind of halfway done where they had the data that was still on the main server, but the program was on the secondary server. Now everything is self-contained in that one box. And the other advantage of virtual servers is they move really easy from place to place. So like for instance, when the admin office moves and Oyster Point needs to access marina billings probably more frequently than the admin office does, then we could move that virtual machine from the box that it's on, we could move it to another box that would then be located at Oyster Point. So that's one of the reasons why I do virtual servers. So, firewalls. I have 3 late entries. because Checkpoint didn't get back to me until after I did these quotes here. There's a lot of quotes for stuff like moving computers and setting up different things that have to do with the move. And there's also things that are in progress, like installing wireless access points. I want to clarify too, information is based on time and materials billing. I billed at $75 an hour. I was asked to come up with...
Well, but just before we go to firewalls, I just have a question. Because you said we have Dell at Pillar Point Harbor, and we have Dell at the admin office. But are those the same as the custom servers, the Athena Tech servers?
No, that's a newer server.
Where are those servers located?
One of them is racked at Oyster, one of them is racked at the admin office, and the other one is currently not installed. The other one was being set up by me, but then we got delayed on doing the install, so it's still sitting there.
So what?
The operating system on it and everything.
So one is racked at the admin office in South City, but it's not actually installed.
Well, it's connected to the network, but it's not doing anything. It's not serving a function at this point.
Okay, and then the other one is in the box.
Mhm.
And then what about the third one?
There is no third one. We opted against purchasing a third one and never got it.
Oh, so there were only two actually
There's
paid
only two
for,
servers at this point, yeah.
that were paid for.
That were paid for, yeah. As a matter, yeah. Yeah, so a deposit was made on the initial purchase of the servers. A deposit was made, and then afterwards, everything just kind of got changed around because it took so long between the time that it was proposed and the time it was implemented that we decided that two more robust servers would be better than three smaller servers.
So a deposit was paid for all three, but we only got the two.
Well, the deposit was made for half of what it would be for all three, and
Okay.
then you got two.
And then we got two, and that was in 2012.
That was in 2012, yes.
So don't they have like a lifespan? Wouldn't they be, why wouldn't we install them? Just so I understand.
Other items were considered to be a higher priority to be done. And also, we were changing operating systems, which involved a lot of work as far as moving data from one system to another, and we had to get the email outsourced, and all that stuff was happening, so the servers didn't get installed. Actually, when I went and did that, I looked at that Athena Tech server because I was asked to look at it, and all of the stuff that's in there is still being sold today. There's nothing in there that's out of date so much that it's not even being sold.
So we bought the Athena servers through your company.
Yeah.
And so it cost about, just for the servers, not including some of the other stuff, it cost about $22,000 for those servers.
Yeah.
But we didn't install them.
Right.
Okay. All right. I'm sorry to interrupt. You were going to talk about Firewall.
So in the initial packet, we have three options for firewalls. I have them as listed in the project as Firewall Option 1, Firewall Option 2, and Firewall Option 3. So the Palo Alto Networks is Firewall Option 1, which is the one that had previously been decided upon and then undecided upon. And then the Firewall Option 2.
Whoa. I'm trying to find one. What's the quote number?
It's 112.
It's 112. Oh, it's the one on the back of the packet
Okay.
thing. Okay, so the first one you're going to talk about is the Palo Alto Networks firewalls, and you have quoted 3 here and then a bunch of support services. And just for the public's information, the total on this quote, number 112, is $21,872.20 in firewalls and support service plans for those firewalls. Okay, go ahead.
Okay, so, and we kind of already talked about that they're rated high in the Gartner curve. They have advanced threat protection. They have several different options, which I also sent information on, which I think are kind of, beyond the scope of this meeting. There's a lot of individual detail. The actual,
But to back up, just for point of clarification for everybody, the district actually already bought these 3 firewalls. We already paid for them. We already approved the bills at a previous meeting. So I just want to make sure that's clear to the public that the district actually already paid for these 3 firewalls. But it was not brought to the board for approval, so there was never a board discussion about the firewall. So this is the first time the board is getting the information about what it is that we purchased. And there were some concerns raised by, well, first by Commissioner Mateusz when he noticed that we approved spending almost $20,000 on firewalls in the bills and claims, but we couldn't tell at that meeting what we were approving because we didn't have the invoice. Then we found out that actually there was no invoice, that the district had gone ahead and paid based on what appeared to have been an estimate. And so there were some concerns raised about that by me, which I could go into detail about later. But at that point, the decision by Acting General Manager Grindy was to return those firewalls. So now those firewalls are being presented to the board as an option for purchase along with some other ones. I'm just trying to make it make sense for people. Okay, sorry, keep going.
So, so they're rated by Gartner as one of the best ones out there. You know, if Tiffany was here, she could tell you why better than I can, but that's done over. Then the second option, which is quote number 111, which is a option. This is basically an apples-to-apples comparison of what it would cost from Cisco, which of course everybody knows Cisco. A lot of people use Cisco. This is an ASA 5512X with IPS. It has triple S and AES encryption. Would provide the same sorts of features that the Palo Alto networks would provide, and it's less money. It's about $14,000.
So wait a minute, am I looking at the wrong, what quote number? I need the quote number.
111.
Okay, so quote 111 is $17,261.50, and that's also for 3 firewalls and installation configuration and whatnot.
And the installation configuration is the same on all the estimates except for the 3 that I brought tonight, which don't have that on.
So noticeably, there's the difference in that these are the actual units. Are more expensive, but they don't have the expensive support plan.
Right.
Okay. And what's next?
And then the next one is option 3, which is a Fortinet, which is Fortinet is another company that's rated really high on the Gartner curve. They have advanced threat protection. They have the same sort of competitive. They're almost competitive with the Palo Alto networks. I would say that of the 3, Cisco has the advantage of being more widely used, especially in government, because they're just the name that's out there. I'm sure everybody's heard of Cisco. Now, Fortinet is another firewall company that has an offering, and they are not as big as Cisco, and they're not as brave as Palo Alto Networks, so they tend to price their devices lower. And that quote there is $14,000, and that's quote number 113. Okay?
Okay, and again, their units are a little more expensive than Palo Alto Networks, but they don't have the extremely expensive service plan.
Right.
Okay.
And the last one, then the 2 new ones I brought 3 new ones.
Do we have those?
Yes.
Is that what this is?
114, 115, and 116.
No, that's not what this is. I need to see this, so, okay, thank you. All right.
So, 114 is a re-up on the support for the units that we currently have in place that are from Checkpoint. So basically, paying for the maintenance from whenever we stop paying, because once you stop paying, then they mark that time, and then when you want to start paying again, they charge you for all the back time that you didn't do, because they want you to keep their maintenance up to date. So that is maintenance for the devices that are currently in place at Pillar Point Harbor and at the admin office. And then the purchase of an additional unit for Oyster Point Marina, because Oyster Point Marina will need a new unit in order to function. And that one is less expensive. It is $10,000, and that is option 4. Then, Checkpoint actually doesn't want us to do that, because when I talked to them, they said that the 2 units that we have at the admin office and at Pillar Point Harbor are currently not sold, and they're decommissioning those units. Even though they will support them, they would not sell them. So they would like us to go buy 3 of the ones that we would normally buy for Oyster Point, which is quote number 115, which includes 3 of the Checkpoint 2200s with the threat protection and the URL filtering and that sort of stuff. And then it was support for those units.
Okay, so we are now going up to
Number 115. Yeah, or you can-
quote 115 for $15,696. Okay?
And then we've got the other guys, the last guys, which actually really like me. I actually really like Dell Sonic Wall. Dell Sonic Wall is they're kind of like the small to medium business entry into the marketplace. They have, and this is a high-end unit for them. This is a Dell Sonic Wall NSA 2600 series firewall, and I put 2 of those in the quote because those are the big dogs. Those would be for the harbors, for Pillar Point Harbor and Oyster Point Marina. And the reason why you put the big dogs in the harbors is because that's where the wireless for the tenants is. And you're going to have a lot more traffic there now because we're doing wireless for the tenants. Everything goes through the firewall. And then a little guy, and it's not it's not like super little, it's a smaller unit for the admin office, which is the NSA 250M, which is line number 2. And that includes the year of support with it for these units. And that is quote number 116, and that's $9,265. And the reason why I brought all these options, I know maybe your head is spinning because there's a million different options. And that's kind of like my style. I tend to not tell people what they need to do. I tend to let them make their own decisions because I don't have all the answers. I'm not going to make believe that I'm the greatest guy in the world. What I'd like to do is present the options and I typically do this with all of my customers, present the options and allow them to make their own decisions.
Well, just previously, just to back up, there was only one option that was presented to the district, which was the option for the Palo Alto networks.
No, there were 3 options presented.
You said that
Tiffany, though, came from Palo Alto Networks.
Right, but you said that the other 2 didn't respond to your requests.
Right. They didn't make a presentation, but I did present their hardware.
You did present quotes?
Yes, I did present quotes.
At that time?
At that time.
Okay, but the board never saw them?
No.
We never saw any of it, and we didn't hear the presentation?
Obviously I didn't know that I had to come over here and stand by the microphone. I've never been to one of these meetings, and typically the stuff that we've done before has just been done through, the people that I knew at the administrative office. So I wasn't aware that, I'm not aware of the workings of the organization. So that was just the way that things have always been done in the past.
I understand.
Did something wrong, I apologize.
No, you did what you were instructed to do by the staff, I'm sure. Okay, so is there anything else that you want to share with us right now? Is that your presentation?
That's pretty much it, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I'm going to go to public comment. I have some questions, and so we might want to have you come back up if you don't mind sticking around. That'd be great. So I'm going to go to public comment. And first I'm going to call Brian Rogers. Okay.
Yeah, just to give you some background, I don't actually install networking, but I oversee projects to do it for clients. Some of the clients have been brokerage houses that handle hundreds of millions of dollars. Some have been oil distributors that are $30, $40 million a year companies. Very similar setups where they have multiple offices. The quotes, those are some fabulous units, but they're way overkill for what you guys do. I was happy to hear about the sonic walls coming up because that's a unit that I'm familiar with and find works really well for clients. $9,000 for 3 sites. Okay, the configuration you guys have is a little questionable. Why all of them need access to the internet directly? Why you can't join that into one and just have point-to-point connectivity between the offices? I'm guessing that all of that just went right over everybody's head. But it's something that you need to talk to your IT group about and say, why aren't we looking at other options and other configurations? Sticking with the configuration that they're coming up with is expensive. It's an expensive solution that's overkill. And again, I've managed putting these things in for clients, several different sites, doing the same idea. They need connectivity between the offices, but I've never spent nearly as much money for a client as this group is asking for. One other thing that I noted in this presentation is 2 years ago, you spent $20,000 on servers you've never even used. Why? What is going on, guys? That's an awful lot of money to just suddenly go, we're not going to use it. By the time you get those plugged in, they're obsolete. I mean, a server's lifespan is normally 5 years at best in a production world. And you're going to put these in, they're going to be 3 years old when you get them functioning. I mean, the wireless at the marinas was presented, and now they're coming back asking for $5,000 worth of hardware more because they underquoted it. Look at the reputation of the group you're working with at this point. It's not real high. And yet you're throwing another somewhere between $10,000 and $20,000 at them. This is something you really got to look at and think about. Thanks.
Thank you. And next, we have Leonard Warren.
I am into a lot of networking myself, and I worked at USC in the 80s when the internet first went commercial public. Before that, it was defense contractors only. Although I've been on the net since 1973. And USC was a leader in networking, so I do know a lot about this stuff. I was responsible for having mainframe B on the internet, which wasn't terribly common in those days. And now I work for a company in Massachusetts. I work from home. I connect to their network over a virtual private network. I can do it with software that goes into Windows. I don't like it for personal reasons, so they supply a VPN router, which is probably a couple $100. But during this presentation, I gotta tell you, my BS detector got a meltdown. Okay, you need to put this out to bid, and you need to look for lower quotes, not a sole source, ridiculously high quote. Most of what's being proposed, you don't need. First of all, you don't need a firewall for the tenants. That's ridiculous, because all the tenants are going to be behind the firewall and they can sabotage each other. So there's no point whatsoever in providing a firewall for the tenants. Each tenant should be responsible for their own firewall, which is a $40 to $60 commodity item of fries. And it's what I use at home. There's at least 3 government agencies on the coast side that do the same thing. They spend at most $100 on hardware and $0 on recurring maintenance. You're getting taken to the cleaners here because staff doesn't have a clue what this guy's talking about. And that's not their job to know either. So you need to find a better professional that is going to give you honest information as to what you really need. And the way I would set this up is a direct internet connection, probably from Comcast, at each location, and then you connect the various locations over the public internet using VPN, virtual private network, and you're done. And this is a tiny, tiny fraction of the price that he's quoting. So I really urge you to go out and put this out to bid and get a number of competent professional bidders. And it looks like that's it. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Next, we have John Olam?
Hi. The firewalls are worth what he's asking for, but they're just, like this gentleman said, way more than you need. I suspect at your internet connectivity at your offices, at your marinas, you might have 10 or 20 megabits up and down if you're lucky.
It's 100.
100?
It's 100.
It's got 100
And it
megabits?
is Comcast.
Anything else?
No.
Okay. So you got 100 megabits up and down. That's really good service. You're lucky to have that. Best I can get in half moon is 50 megabits up and down. And that's a business class service that I only need because I can get static IPs. I wouldn't need that if it wasn't for that. But even at that, the firewall he's proposing is 250 megabits. It's able to pass that without traffic. Right there, that's twice, 2.5 times as much traffic as you could ever pass. You can't pass anything bigger than the pipe. It's the smallest pipe, and the smallest pipe is your internet restriction. I can see why you might need a firewall to provide some quality of service issues to your tenants, so that somebody doesn't go and download 500 gigabytes of pornography and shut off everybody else's access to the network. But that is fairly easy to do, and there's some devices that'll do that for $300 to $500. I work in an environment where I support 50 to 70 people in the office. I got people all over the world. We don't have any firewalls. They're close to that. We got one firewall that handles all of those people. It's about a $2,500 firewall. Now, I think the thing you need to really know is that your vendor is willing to sell you whatever it is that he can sell. He's not interested in selling you what you need. And the proof is in those $10,000 servers. I have worked in data centers where there are thousands of servers in the back of the room. I support about 15 servers at the place I'm working right now. I've never laid my hands on a $10,000 server. Never. Most of the servers that I've worked with run between $2,000 and $5,000. The servers that you guys ordered, apparently only one of them is being used. That one server could probably handle all of your requirements, just putting virtual machines on it. I got a list here of devices that you have. It doesn't make a lot of sense because it starts off saying you have 2 virtual machines at each location. A virtual machine is not a real thing. There's nothing you can hold on to. You need a real machine that holds your 2 virtual machines. Thank you, 30 seconds left. Anyway, so you should discuss virtual machines and ways of redoing the 100 ways to skin the cat that your gentleman described how you can skin it. There are a $10,000 server is so ridiculous. You guys had 500 gigabyte SSDs lined up in an array. In 2012, I believe is when this server was built, a 512 gigabyte SSD card, probably about $400 or $500 item. You could have, with a RAID, their whole idea was to use cheap disks. And then you could have got that same setup for $500, had far more data capacity, had the same redundancy, maybe a fraction of a second slower at serving up. Unless you're serving huge databases, or getting thousands of connections per second, or running tremendously large data sets and running analytics on them. 64 gigabytes RAM. In 2012, you're probably looking at a couple $1,000s a server into RAM. No one uses 64 gigabyte RAM on a server. Unless you're doing, like I say, you're hosting big databases, nothing like what we would have in this district. You're talking, enterprise quality stuff. Somebody took your organization for a ride. They sold you $30,000 of servers, at most it should have been $6,000 of servers. They should have been Dell servers, off the shelf, with 3-year warranties, next day maintenance, the whole wall wax. They're getting customized servers. Looks like they're buying parts of Fried and putting them together. It's the most expensive way to do these things. You really need to reevaluate, you need to get a better vendor. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have David Ablogi.
Good evening. My name is David Ablogi. Most of you have never seen me before. For those who don't know, in 2004, I started an IT/MSP company, which was built to $1 million company with 54 clients, 1,500 desktops under management. All of them were functioning identical to the Harbor Commission. I was asked to review the publicly available information on the recent IT task in the Harbor Commission I've also prepared packets for you, but I'm going to go off script from the packet for just a few minutes to answer just a couple questions. You have 2 Dell servers, 2950s, in each location currently. That question was posited. On each of those machines is running 2 virtual servers. I don't have access to them, so I don't know what's running there. But those are the 2 physical machines. Each one, according to the service tags, is a pretty basic machine and probably cost, at its time 6 years ago, I'm going to go with $3,000, maybe $4,000 tops, okay? Something happened in 2012 that caused your agency to purchase, or attempt to purchase, almost $35,000 of servers that everyone has already harped on here and is exactly right. The reason you know those servers were overbuilt is because your 6-year-old servers, with literally an order of magnitude less performance, have been sitting in the box for the entire time. I'm not going to go into the obsolescence of the servers, but that's a huge red flag. I can honestly say I never had a client that spent $10,000. I did have a few that spent $10,000 on huge database servers for 50 to 60 users, all simultaneously using a SQL database in a production facility. You don't even have 15 users just using basic email in one application. The second thing is on that invoice, there are a total of 30 user cows that were purchased. Okay? A user cow is a user license. When you have a server operating system, it allows you to log on to the system. You don't have 30 users, and it's 30 concurrent users. That system hasn't been put in service, so I don't think it matters. But the point is, you don't have 30 users. On that same invoice, there were 2 KVM switches. I know you're going to go, what's a KVM switch? Let's say you've got 5 servers here lined up, right? And you want to be able to manage all 5 servers. Well, you don't want to have 5 different sets of keyboard, video, monitor setups, right? So there's a box, a little box. You can buy them for $100 that you can plug all the servers into, and you just press the button. And lo and behold, you can look at each server on the KVM. In the Pillar Point office, you have a KVM, a very expensive $750 KVM, with built-in monitor for 1 server. Think about that for a second. You have 1 server. You could do it with a mouse and keyboard and for $50. But your vendor sold you 2 of them, 1 for that location, 1 for the admin office. And you're not using them. I mean, you look at the back, you can see all the plugs lined up. They're all empty because there are no servers. There's 1 server. I'm going to jump to the firewalls now. So if you want to go to your packets, firewall for the board. I'm going to keep bumping along here for a minute.
So I just want to, I didn't explain that we received a package with David's speaker slip, which is here. So I don't know if the public wants to look at this. I'd be happy to pass mine out as soon as this item is over, and I'll put it on the back table for people to look at. And I am interested in hearing about this, so I'd like to allow you to continue talking.
Thank you. So if I could ask you to go to there's 2 basic packets in there. If I could ask you to go to the one that starts here. This is a feature breakout of the current firewalls that you have in place. So that it says at the top, UTM1, Edge, NW series. And you'll notice I've highlighted 3 areas there. Then flip back to page 3, which is the Palo Alto Network's PA500 that's recommended. If you'll notice those 3 categories line up, and they're essentially identical. The performance is essentially identical. When you buy a firewall, what you're paying for the most part, is throughput. It's like a highway. They all do the same feature. Highway 92 gets you here. The question is, do you want it to be a 1-lane road or a 20-lane road? The PA500 is a 20-lane road. What you need is a 2-lane road, at best. So if you go back in that packet, I asked 2 former competitors of mine to put together a few quotes of representative equipment. The first one, the Zywall, and I have no financial connection to these companies. These are literally previous competitors. Does the same thing that Palo Alto Networks does for $1,299. The difference is it doesn't do it for 500 people simultaneously. It does it for up to 50 simultaneously.
Which estimate are we looking at?
That
number?
is 550.
550, okay.
And you'll see behind that there's a data sheet on the Firewall. And if you look at that data sheet, which I hope you don't because your ears bleed, you'll see that it lines up perfectly with the PA500 that was spec'd to you without the enormously expensive software package.
So the total, just for the public's information, the total cost on estimate 550 is $4,250, and that includes 3 firewalls.
Correct, which I'm, to be clear, I think 3 identical firewalls is overkill. for what we're doing, but I wanted to spec it as it was being spec'd previously. If you continue back, there's another quote for $7,000 from another competitor for a slightly more capable device. It's really just for reference purposes. And then just for fun, I had the original person spec the cheapest way you could do this. So the vendor used a Netgear ProSafe switch, which tells me he's okay with Netgear and ProSafe, their line of products. So I had a quote done with a Netgear, I'm not going to read all the numbers, it doesn't matter. They're $500 a piece. They do not offer the level of threat and intrusion protection that the more expensive devices do, but they will do what you need them to do. And the question you have to ask is, do we need the best, or do we need good enough? So literally, that one's $1,634 out the door.
For 3 firewalls? Okay.
For 3 firewalls. I've already covered the billing. So the second packet has the invoice that you looked at, and the reason I'm speaking to you here is what you need to do is you need to hire a third party to give you a needs assessment and an audit. There are a whole bunch of other things that popped up in here that we're not going into because this is not the place to do it. The reality is you have no oversight right now for your IT vendor, for your IT environment. If I asked you, what is your backup disaster recovery plan, I guarantee you there's no one here who can tell me what it is. And if it's e-folder, that's not a backup disaster recovery plan. The wireless configuration going into the harbors, that should be completely segregated from your local networks. It should not go through the same firewall. There's no reason to put it through the same firewall. And to do that is to put them on the same subnet and expose your internal communications to every John, Dick, and Harry who's in the harbor with a wireless connection. So there's a whole bunch of stuff that's going on here, and what you need to do is get yourself a needs assessment. To that end, I put a quote from Caspian IT behind the bid, which outlines what a needs assessment would contain, what would go into it, and what you could expect. I didn't have time to get one from the second vendor. You can use them, you can go find someone else, but get yourself a needs assessment and an audit and figure out where you're at. Thanks.
Thank you. Okay, that was an earful from everybody. So do any of the commissioners have questions? I do.
Do you mind coming back after? It's Steve or?
Yep, let's see.
Thanks.
Door, liar, cheat, gouger.
Can you please tell me how, you said the firewalls that are currently in place, they're kind of old, but how old are they?
You know, I don't have that data. I know they were purchased from me, and I know that I started in about 2010.
Okay. And then roughly, if I want to kind of categorize your 3 quotes that we had in the board packet, the 3 for 14,000, 17,000, and 21,000 roughly, if I want to put them in a lower end mid-range and luxury version, where would the current checkpoint firewalls that we have, where would they fit in?
I think they probably fit in the middle. I mean,
Okay.
the reason we got the checkpoint routers is because they had good throughput, they were inexpensive, and they actually seemed like good devices for the price, you know. And back when we bought them, they weren't nearly as expensive as this.
Okay.
So.
But you also said we don't absolutely, it's not that we absolutely need new ones right now, we can work with the ones that we've purchased already.
We just need one.
Right, for,
We could get a, you know, another, it's nice to have them all, it's nice to have them all from the same vendor. The same vendor's devices all talk to each other a lot better than having different vendors, but we could buy a Zytel or a Netgear or a Sonic Wall, as long as they all speak, you know, AES encryption, I would recommend, because, you know, desks got cracked and now people can get into that, and if you go to triple desk, that provides you a modicum of protection, but I can't imagine that triple desk isn't going to get cracked sometime soon too, whereas AES is the newest encryption protocol.
okay.
And these 3 sites do communicate with their own private networks over the internet through VPNs. The point-to-point scenario was explored, it's a lot more money, and it's a lot less throughput. Right now, each location has a Comcast drop, it's 100 megabits down, it's 20 megabits up.
Okay.
So,
And then I have one last question for you for clarification. The options that you gave us today, option 4, 5, and 6, I think you lost me when you explained the part. Option 4 would basically just do maintenance with the current.
It also has one additional box.
Yeah, one additional that we would need, but the current firewall, and that is roughly $10,000, and then option number 6 would actually be 2 new firewalls, but it's cheaper. Can you just?
Option number 6
It's
is
the 9,000.
actually 3 new firewalls. It's two higher end ones
Right,
and one
for the marinas
lower
and
end one for the admin
Yeah.
office, because the admin office doesn't have the, a decision was made originally. The wireless estimate that is proposed here is not an overage on the original wireless estimate. The original wireless estimate, what the money that was allocated for that has not been fulfilled. The original idea was to have the wireless for the tenants go over a completely different wireless network. But it was that having two even though the Comcast services at the locations are relatively inexpensive, I mean, we're talking, it's less than $400 a month, I think. I believe it's something like that, right around the $400 a month number. I'd have to get exact numbers. But we decided that it would be better, since the mesh network devices, they maintain a internal division between the public network and the private network. So there's little risk of the public network side interfering with the private network side. So in order to save the district $800 a month in additional internet circuits for the tenants, it was thought that 100 down and 20 up is fast enough for the district and for the tenants. So that was the logic behind that, to respond to one of the comments that was made. But I mean, it would be perfectly fine to just install a Comcast circuit, throw their router on it, and then have the Wi-Fi for the tenants go over that. The issue is to get the coverage, you just gotta, and also the other advantage of having the wireless on the same network is that they've got the little meter reader that they walk around with now, that they can now, the district personnel can walk around on the docks and get the district Wi-Fi in addition to the public Wi-Fi. If the public Wi-Fi was on a completely separate network, then we'd have to set up 2 parallel systems. So every access point would have another access point sitting next to it that would be on a different network. Is it more secure? Yes. It's twice as expensive. So, But that's why I'm saying, and I'm sorry, that's kind of a long explanation for your question is, I think, why are there 2 bigger ones and 1 smaller one, right?
No, my question was actually why the quote for option 6 with the 3 new servers is cheaper than option number 4, where we would use the 2 current firewalls and 1.
Yeah, well, because option 4, they're making us pay all the maintenance that we haven't paid, since we stopped paying maintenance. Now, option number 7, we can do anything that you want to do. And that's why I try not to make decisions for my customers. What I have presented is by no means a presentation of every single firewall that's available in the entire world, including the ones that you can go down to Fry's and buy. Okay? It is a presentation based on what I believe your traffic and your requirements are. Now, if you wanted to go with if you cross out the top line on option number 4 and just say, forget it, we're just going to go fly by night, we'll just get 1 more additional router, you won't pay any support on it, and we'll get the network going on our own, we could do that as well. And then that would be, what, $3,800. And that, of course, we can go with a lower end router as well.
Okay.
So, but, I think they're right. You should get another person in here, have them look it over, have them figure it out again. We kind of sort of figured all this out, and I'm sorry that the board wasn't involved when we figured it all out before. But this was not, I was not aware that it was a requirement, and we sat there and knocked our heads together and decided what we thought was best for the district. So.
Okay, thank you very much. I just have one quick question for Scott, and I know you were on vacation while some of this happened, but did staff consider writing an RFP for this work?
There was some discussion about that, but it was understood by staff at the time that when they were looking at the potential of the space they were going to move into, that they would just use the vendor we have. And that was the understanding at that time, and discussions with the 2 board members that were there, and that's what I was told by the staff.
I'd like to respond to that. I actually asked for additional estimates because I was very uncomfortable with.
At that time, because I didn't hear that part, I just heard it.
I always want to see more information. I think everybody knows that about me. So yeah, I definitely wanted to see. I think it's always a good idea to get 3 estimates, and the district has policies on how we're supposed to proceed when we're buying expensive things. And so I think that it was kind of confusing at the time because it sounded like a lot of this stuff was needed for the move, and what I'm finding is that these things are not as needed for the move as I had been led to believe. And the moving cost, which we haven't talked about yet, seems to be on the high side as well, especially given the circumstances of the place that we might end up moving into, which is very, very well wired and has server rooms and is completely ready to go. So I have questions, but I wanted to give Commissioner Paravano a chance.
Thank you. Steve, if I can follow up on Commissioner David's question regarding, I think it was number 4, option 4. I didn't understand, you removed the top line, can you clarify for me which one?
Yeah, the top line is the maintenance re-up that reinstates the support for the 2 existing firewalls that we have in place.
Okay, and what's that, I just want to make sure I'm reading the right number. Which number?
Number 114.
Yeah, okay.
The $5,380 number.
That's the one you would remove.
Yeah.
Okay. And with that new expense, that would get us what we need.
Yeah.
And you're comfortable with that figure? All right. Great, thank you.
And I'm not particularly comfortable with the government organization having devices in place that don't have active support contracts, but I've done it a million times for people who don't have the money for support contracts. And I have customers that are very small, that don't have firewalls at all, and I have customers that are very big, that spend a lot more than $10,000 on servers and firewalls. But I don't know where you're at. I'm presenting this information to you based on where I think we should be, and maybe I'm wrong about the capacity and what we need, what the requirements are. Last week we had over 200 people using the public Wi-Fi from the statistics that I gathered. And it's not even 100% coverage.
Was that current users or concurrent users?
It's not concurrent users.
That's what council, right?
Yes, that's what counts.
Any other questions?
No.
Okay. I have a few questions for Steve. So I made a list here, and a few others have come up while we've been hearing all this. Why do we need a KVM switch at Pillar Point?
At one point, we had decided that we were going to install multiple servers there, but then we never did.
Okay. And so if we had known that we weren't going to install multiple servers, then we could have just done what was suggested, the monitor, keyboard, mouse solution for $50?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
That was what was there originally. The nice thing about the system is the KVM is not the expensive part. It's the folding monitor and keyboard all put into one thing. That's the expensive part, just to keep it all inside the rack. Because when I first got there was an old, ET-looking monitor thing on the top and a keyboard and a mouse. It just was difficult to use whenever I went out there. It was hard to use. So.
Okay, but why would we need to install multiple servers there, just so I
We
understand?
bought 3 servers, one for each of the locations, and that was where everyone was going to go. Was that?
Okay. Can you tell me what features your proposed firewall solutions have that our current Checkpoint UTM-1 devices do not have?
URL filtering, deep packet inspection, and actually, and then the advanced threat protection. That's kind of sort of where we're going with each one of those is those options. Okay. And what it is that for, to basically kind of make it easier to understand is firewalls are designed to keep people out. But obviously you can't keep everybody out. There are certain people that you want to come in. That traffic that comes through is basically what we're concentrating on. Anything that comes through the firewall, like for instance, say you're getting an email, or say you're surfing the web and you're getting information from the internet, that information comes back through the firewall. Typically, the go-in firewall, that information is just allowed through and it's not looked at. It says, oh, okay, well, this person here on this end of the firewall wanted that information, so I'm just going to send it all through. What the new firewalls have is the firewalls in this, all of the ones in this, and probably the ones that they're talking about, they have a capability of inspecting the actual information as it flies by. It takes it apart and it looks inside, and it looks for bad stuff. And then how it knows to look for bad stuff is there's people that are much smarter than I that are sitting there in a think tank somewhere programming what bad stuff looks like. And that's why you have to have a subscription in order for it to work, because they're constantly updating. It's like an antivirus program. There's always new viruses that are coming out. So when you buy an antivirus program, you're really not just buying the program. An antivirus program without the subscription is not worth very much. You need an antivirus program and you need the subscription that continuously updates it to allow it to detect the new viruses or detect the new threats. The URL filtering is something that would prevent people from inadvertently going to sites that may be, like racist sites, violent sites, pornographic sites from district computers. It would prevent them from going there. Now, I'm not saying that you got a bunch of people that sit around all the time and cruise, weapons sites or something like that. But all of us have gone to a website that has popped up 15 different windows. And sometimes those 15 different windows aren't things that you want to see. That URL filtering would prevent you from seeing things that you don't want to see. Okay, that's what the URL filtering is about. And then, I had asked Tiffany what wildfire was, and she explained it to me. But there's a whole sheet, and I believe you might have it in your packet, that has a definition or descriptions of all of these features and exactly what they do.
Have you ever talked to the folks over at Monterey Harbor? Because they have a system where they have free Wi-Fi at their harbor, and they monitor if people are downloading a lot of films and stuff and taking up too much bandwidth or whatever, I don't know all the right terms. They have a way of monitoring that themselves. They installed their whole system for like dirt cheap. We're talking like under $1,000. So
well, Cisco Meraki, I think, gave them that equipment because Cisco Meraki wireless access points, I don't know, you guys can maybe answer it differently than I do, but I know I have a customer that has Meraki, and you pay an annual support fee for the Meraki units, and you also pay, they're like $1,000, is that they have the low-end ones that are like $600, but the ones that we're buying, the Wi-Fi access points, are like $100. So that's because that's a wireless mesh network.
Well, it's
the same sort of deal.
Seems to be working really well for them. They're happy with it, and I think it is Meraki that they're using.
It is.
So I'm going to keep going here so we can get through this. What is the connection between the upcoming move and the need for the new firewalls?
Oyster Point being on its own.
Okay, so it's really just Oyster Point that you feel necessitates these firewalls. Okay. Can you describe what our $3,000 towards the move would be paying for? What the $3,000 for the move would be paying for exactly?
What $3,000?
Is that quote 104 that you're?
Let me find the quote number. It's here somewhere.
Or is it quote number 106? 106 is a flat 3,000, but 104 is 3,270 with tax. So page number 3 or page number 6?
I can't even find that section. I've got so
Oh,
many papers on this.
Number 5.
Talking about 104, I think, right? Quote 104?
Well, 106 is
106 is
also
3,000.
104.
And they're both for the
104 is
move.
the office move. I don't know what 106 is, let me look at 106.
So it's the office move that I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Oh, yes, I'm sorry, that says the
That's
access
the one we're
points.
talking about, right?
Yeah.
So
104 is an estimate based on what it would cost for us to disconnect all of the computers and transport them from the old locations to the new location and set them up, change the IP addresses, because right now the admin office network is on a 10.0.0 domain, and I'd like it to kind of correspond with what Pillar Point has, which is 192.168.1, and then I would say the admin office Oyster Point could be .2, and then the admin office could be .3. It's not that much additional work, and since we're moving the servers anyway, I think it would be nice to kind of have them all organized neatly. And then, so it's based on my hourly rate, which is $75 an hour. If it comes out less than that, then you get billed less than that. I was asked to come up with definitive numbers, and that's what I came up with, is definitive numbers. So that doesn't necessarily mean that, and that's like the wiring quote. The wiring quote, I was asked to generate a wiring quote based on a sight unseen of a new facility that may or may not have wires. That was why it was $6,000. Well, it's not going to be $6,000, not even close to $6,000. And if you move into that one site that we looked at, because it's already all wired, it's done. So we even brought a wire tester out and tested them, and the wires are fine. So these are all estimates based on my normal hourly rate, which is $75 an hour.
Okay. Our current network is running on a 6-year-old Dell 2950 server with a single processor at the admin and Pillar Point locations. Is that correct? They're both the same?
I have no idea how many processors are in it, but I thought it was a dual processor.
So probably,
Okay.
It's a dual.
Where is the service tag and Dell is a single processor?
Okay, then they're single.
What happened in 2012 that made you think that we should buy these 2 new servers, the $22,000 in new servers? I'm just wondering what triggered that decision in 2012 that you made the recommendation for those.
I was asked to come up with a quote for new servers because the operating system that is on the main server, the authentication server, is running on Windows 2003. And at that point, we determined that that will probably be obsolete, and it actually is on Microsoft's list to be obsolete. And so we decided to quote new servers. I was asked to quote new servers because at that time there was money in the budget for new servers.
Okay. Oh, so there was money in the budget for it. And who were you working with? Like, who made the decision to buy the
I was
servers?
working with Marietta Harris.
Okay. Do we know, Scott, if those servers were, the expense, the $22,000 was approved by the board, or do we not know yet if that came before the board?
That was even before I was hired, so we haven't gone through that yet.
Okay, so we're not sure. So there wasn't an application, like, oh, we got a new application, it's massive,
No.
we've got to buy new servers.
There was money left in the budget, and, it was decided at that point, what are we gonna spend the money on?
Okay,
And it was decided to spend the money on new servers.
okay. And can you describe what the 30 user CALs were for?
30 people.
Okay. So were you thinking the district was going to get a lot bigger? Because we only have about, I think it's, 17 workstations? How many workstations do we have?
Yeah, but you had a locally hosted Exchange server back then, and when you have a locally hosted Exchange server, you have to pay for every user, not just concurrent users.
Are you sure about that? You're
Yes.
sure about that?
Because a small business server requires a license for every Exchange mailbox. Now, since then, I would never install small business server because small business server is obsolete. So that would change. I actually don't have the operating system for those servers. The operating system I waited on because I knew that small business server was in trouble, and I never purchased the operating system. So that would be purchased probably server 2012 standard, which would handle the memory that's in that server.
Okay. So if we need these powerful servers, can you explain what changed between 2012 and now that rolled out placing them into service? Like, why weren't they?
We had the wireless for the harbors that we were rolling out. We had the phone changeover that was happening, and you know, various other projects that were happening, and things were changing in the industry, and then basically the servers got put on the back burner.
So other projects came up?
Yeah.
Okay. And who is the manufacturer of the wireless hardware that's been in place to date at Oyster Point and Pillar Point?
It's a company called Cloud, the management solutions through Cloud Tracks, and the access points are, you know, I don't remember. It's through the company that runs Cloud Tracks. It's Open Mesh. That's right, Open Mesh.
Open
is the name
Mesh.
of the company that manufactures the access points, and they're managed through Cloud Tracks.
Okay. So the other question I had is originally when the board approved the Wi-Fi, we had looked at various quotes, and I don't have them in front of me, so I don't remember exactly what we were looking at, but I remember hearing Open Mesh at some point. But then I heard that we went with Comcast. Isn't that sort of?
Open Mesh is the Open Mesh is the wireless. It doesn't have any, it doesn't have any connectivity to the internet.
Mm-hmm.
Comcast is the connection to the internet. Open Mesh is what provides the wireless.
And right now, the connection or the signal at Pillar Point Harbor is not as good as it could be. There needs to be what, more antennas added, or what needs to be?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
More antennas need to be added.
And is that the case for Oyster Point as well?
Yes.
So
we ran into a problem with the actual electrical wiring, because even though the Open Mesh networks don't need a physical network cable attached to them, the original plan was that they would be plugged into the piers, basically, to go out there. Well, it ends up that all of those plugs are metered plugs. So basically now you're going to have to tell the tenant, oh, you're paying for Wi-Fi for all your friends because it's coming on your electric bill. So I had been working with Scott to try and find a way to isolate those electrical circuits so the electrical power could be provided to those access points without billing a tenant for them. And because all of those plugs are all metered, which I didn't know when I was doing the original, proposal, which is what you're saying you had looked at, that I talked about. I wasn't aware of that. I saw plugs. I saw plugs on the harbor, and I thought, oh, look, there's a place we can plug it in. I didn't realize that those plugs were actually metered plugs for the boats.
for the tenants.
Yeah, for the tenants. And so that's why, and I've actually been looking into trying to get some sort of a solar array that would power them with the solar array and batteries so that we could mount them up high on the poles and then power them with the sun, which I thought would be kind of a nice idea, but there's not anything really out there that comes out of the box that's canned for that. It would be something that you would have to develop on your own, or maybe one of these guys knows a solution that you could just get out of the box. And all of the solar panels are really large too. I was thinking of something that could maybe be self-contained in a maybe an 11 by 11 box or something that you could stick on top and nobody would really notice it. It would be like this big ugly solar panel on the side of the lamppost.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of why we've got the wireless up. It's in a place where we can power it. It's sitting on the sides of the harbor master's office, and that's as far as it had gone because at this point we're not sure. Some of the light posts get turned on and off by a switch, and so during the day they wouldn't have Wi-Fi, but at night they would. So it's difficult to find an actual electrical outlet.
Okay.
So.
Okay. I have some more questions, and I want to ask David some questions, but there is another speaker slip that just showed up, and I want to allow this last speaker to speak. I'm going to try to get your name right, Charlie. McAuliffe?
Yes.
Oh, I got it. Okay. Thank you.
I just wanted to comment as I've been sitting here listening to all of this. I've had experience working with existing structures on the coast side. I've lived here for 20 years. This is a very old entity. You have a lot of moving parts. I grew up on the Brooklyn Marina docks. I live 2 blocks from this harbor. I'm not sure where you guys live or if you've been around, but the best decisions were made given all of the moving parts. I've had the privilege of working with Steve. I've had the privilege of working in both harbors with the Harbor Patrol and with administration assisting, and the other vendors that are also involved. And we can sit here all night long and beat this dead horse about, well, he should have done this or could have done that. But I have felt the best, for my short period of time, a lot happened. The best decisions were made given this Pandora's box, so to speak. And I agree oversight's needed, especially since the person that was doing the very best job that she could at the time is no longer with us. I don't think we should sit here and, this guy's got a lot of experience. You think you can come in and fix it, but there's a lot of moving parts, and there's already a relationship here, and he provided great technical support, and so I just thought I'd say that.
Thank you. Okay. I only have a few more questions. So these are questions for David. Maybe you could come back. What is a KVM switch, and why is it highlighted on the invoice?
I think that one's already been asked and answered for what it's worth.
Okay.
That's the KVM switch that's in Pillar Point and for one server.
For one server? Okay.
It allows you to control multiple computers simultaneously.
Okay, so this is the thing that we could have done for a lot less money,
You don't even need, but yes, you could have done it for a lot less money.
for $50.
Yep.
Okay. What are user cows?
Also, I think asked and answered. I will say though that SBS 2003, which is the operating system that Steve mentioned, is bundled with Exchange. So going from what he's saying, I'm going to assume that you're using the Exchange server on SBS 2003. You can have an unlimited number of mailboxes attached to that server that send and receive mail without having user cows. I grew up specializing in SBS 2003. I can take it apart down to its nuts and bolts if you want me to. You need, when someone logs in on a network, you need a user cow. But the other thing worth noting is he sold you, sorry, and this isn't about taking Steve to task. I was asked to take a look at stuff realistically, and that's what I'm trying to do. So I want to apologize, because this really wasn't about coming in and banging you about. The user cows that we're addressing were for server 2012. There is no Exchange mention, there is no Exchange bundle, so I'm assuming they were going to move the email to hosting to either Microsoft Office or Hosted Exchange or some other service, but those have nothing to do with Exchange. They're completely disassociated operating systems, servers, and domain controllers.
Okay. Can you explain the differences between the checkpoint firewall we now have and the proposed solutions that we've heard about?
Yes, and functionally they are identical. The checkpoint is becoming dated from a hardware standpoint. I don't think purchasing a service contract, I would not recommend to any of my clients that they purchase a service contract for a physically obsolete piece of hardware. But the hardware works, that's why it hasn't been replaced in the last 3, 4, 5 years. Is it contemporary? No. It could be replaced at, a $2,000, even $1,000 device in today's world is going to give you more threat and intrusion protection and more capability if you want to manage it than that device would give you. However, it works just fine. It's perfectly adequate for what you're using it for, and there's no, you don't need to replace it today to protect anyone.
Thanks. Can you describe the differences between the servers currently in use and the 2 that we purchased? Apparently, I thought we'd purchased 3, but now I'm hearing we purchased 2.
I think I addressed that a little bit earlier, but I have the service tag off the Pillar Point server, and on Dell's website, for every server they've ever built, you can put in the service tag number, it'll give you the configuration of the server and everything else. Many orders of magnitude difference in capability.
Okay.
I mean, I could go through item by item, but it would be different to know.
And why do you feel a needs assessment or audit is necessary or required in the case of the Harbor District?
Because there are many moving parts, and I don't believe anyone has been managing this from a project management or service management basis to provide oversight to ensure that resources from the Harbor District are not being wasted unnecessarily. Like $25,000 worth of service sitting in boxes for 3 years. So that's indefensible, right? If you needed them, then you would put them in service. If you didn't need them, then we had money in the budget, how are we going to spend it? I'm sorry, as a taxpayer, that infuriates me. I mean, can I have them? Can I borrow them for a little bit? Use them at home? I could do some Bitcoin mining with them. I mean, they serve no valid purpose. So in my experience, IT relationships with small companies or with districts go through an evolution. There's the get to know you phase where people are filling each other out, and eventually you get to a level of trust, which is clearly in place here. When you have that level of trust, you stop looking at what you're doing and what you're spending. And so decisions are made outside the scope of the body or the people that are responsible, the business owner or the board. And those decisions may be open to question, which is, I think, what we're seeing here. One last thing I want to tie on, your power supply for the wireless mesh, at best 12 volts at 250 milliamps, at total most $3 a month in electricity. Give your people who are in those slots, give them a $5 credit on their bill and call it good.
So that would be your suggestion for solving the problem?
It'd be my first suggestion.
Yeah, okay. Well, thank you, I appreciate it.
No problem.
Thank you both. Any other questions?
I have a question for David. I'm sorry, I didn't catch your last name.
It's Iblovi.
Iblovi?
Your time, maybe.
Yeah, thank you. I would like to ask you the questions that were just asked of you. Have you seen those questions before?
Specifically, no. Was I a part of the creation of them? I'm going to guess I was. I mean,
And can you explain how?
The share for the number of people
Yeah.
that I provided here.
Can you explain a little bit more about that? How it came to be that these questions came to the board president and they were asked of you?
Yeah, I could.
Please.
I was asked to evaluate the IT support services that were being provided to the district on behalf of the board. I did that. I was asked to provide background so that the board could understand what it was I was speaking about. I did that.
And when you mean the board,
You, the three of you. None of what I've said here has any pertinence to any one of you. This information is for you to do with as you see fit.
right, I'm talking about the questions.
What about, I did not raise those questions. I provided the information, I'm guessing, because of how close what I wrote was to those questions, I'm guessing
Yeah.
they were based on the information.
So
I
these
provided.
questions were not originated from you?
No.
Thank you. Anything else?
I'd like to ask the question of Commissioner Paramano. What's the relevance?
Well, maybe there's a sheet of paper here that you'd like to share. There's questions, let me see. You were reading,
This?
no, there's a sheet of paper here
There's the
that,
costs for the firewalls.
there was a sheet of paper here that had David's name on it.
There's a lot of sheets of paper here. Commissioner Paramano. Are we going to talk about your norms later? Your board norms?
Yeah,
Would you like to know if I've emailed Commissioner Brennan directly?
Yes,
Yes, I have. Would you
Okay.
like to know if I've emailed Commissioner David directly? Yes, I have.
okay, where's the email from David that you were reading from?
I don't have his email with me.
David, do you have a copy of that?
I certainly do.
Okay. Great.
Any other questions?
Okay. Thank you, David.
Do you have any other questions?
I have a comment that I want to make.
Can I sit down? Is this a comment?
No.
Okay.
Thank you. So So I'm really impressed with the IT knowledge we have at this meeting today. I'm definitely gonna know who to call next when I run into computer problems. And, you know, it is really important to me that the district is frugal with how we spend taxpayer dollars. And it seems like with all the concerns raised tonight, that there might be some merit to look into these issues deeper. But I do want to come back to the item that is before the board tonight, and that is that the staff needs some kind of decision on the media technology procurement because of our office move. And I feel accountable for that because I voted for the move, and there is not much time left. Our lease ends in 8 weeks. And so I think we need to give staff guidance on how to move forward. And I think it would be, in my mind, the best decision right now to focus on move-related items only and try to really facilitate the move and make it work as smoothly as possible. And so if I look at the list on page 2 of our board packet and the fiscal impact, we have 4, 6, 8 bullet points there, and maybe this is a question more for Steve. I would think that the IT services for office move is essential. The computers for OPM warehouse and Philip service desk is essential. The finance desk, we might be able to take that out, as well as the Wi-Fi extension to commercial docs at this point. I'm not quite sure about the open office internet, but that's just $200. The Wi-Fi extension to the dock for $2,500, is that something we could?
No,
that is
doesn't have
not
anything to do with the move.
okay.
Doesn't have anything to do with the move.
Okay. And then, as well as the internet phone conversion, we can probably take that out.
Doesn't have anything to do with the move.
And if I add up the 3 or 4 items that are on this fiscal impact list that are essential for the move right now, and also look at option 4 of the quotes that were submitted to us today. Option 4 is the $10,600 option, but we said it's optional to use the maintenance re-app for $5,380. We could exclude that now.
I'm sorry, which estimate are you looking at?
114, it's one of the new ones for today. So if we did that, we would bring that quote down to like 5,300, and adding up the essential task of the fiscal impact. This bullet point list here, roughly we're at $12,000 that we could, we could approve something like that, not to exceed $12,000 for technology consulting and equipment tonight, because I think we're running out of time to get RFPs out, but we should consider that at a later point after we've moved, after we've settled in. I think, you know, it's important to have comparisons and see how we want to go about this in the future. But
Sounds like you got a lot of guys who have a bunch of business. Go ahead, they're ready to rock.
We'll never get to this. Good.
But I think it is very important that the board helps staff with the move and make it work as smoothly as possible at this point. And I'm ready to make a motion, but when it's my turn.
Would you like to comment on that? So I am
Thank you, Steve.
extremely uncomfortable moving forward with spending $10,000 after what we just heard tonight. I think that would be incredibly irresponsible, and I'm definitely not going to vote for that. But I also understand why Commissioner David is concerned about the move. We have around $3,000 that's listed here that we're being told is the high end of what it might cost to facilitate the move. To me, $3,000 sounds like a very high end when the move is this. You turn off the machines, you move the machines. That's it. I mean, it's not a big deal to hook up the machines. Everything's already wired at the new office, so there's nothing to do here. So I don't see how it could even cost $3,000. But to agree to spend $10,000 when we clearly have a problem with this vendor without getting another estimate from another vendor, which actually we do have because a member of the public brought some, is just completely unacceptable in my opinion. So I am really disturbed by what I've heard tonight. I'm very uncomfortable with moving forward with this vendor, and I think that we need to reevaluate. I think we need to get a couple more estimates. It will not take long to do that. It's not a big deal to do that, and we need to proceed thoughtfully by looking at estimates from more than one vendor. And, you know, while I agree we need to pay somebody to help us with the move, I think $3,000 is too high, and I think we need to reevaluate what we need at Oyster Point Marina. This is completely out of control, and it's been going on for way too long. So I'm really adamant about that, and disappointed that we would even consider moving forward with anything further based on everything that I've heard here tonight. I mean, just the fact that we were sold $22,000 in servers in 2012 that were never connected, it is outrageous. I am livid about that kind of waste, and I don't want to see it continue. I don't want to be part of that. And I'm also very frustrated with the fact that we were sold firewalls that we don't need, and we own these firewalls. We paid for them. We were supposed to get our money back. We haven't gotten our money back. As far as I know, we haven't gotten 1 cent back. And here they are, they're back, and it's like they're being pushed on us all over again. This is just maddening. This is craziness. You know, I cannot understand why we would possibly consider moving forward with this vendor at this point after what happened with the servers and with the fact that the district was sold firewalls that we don't need, that are outrageously expensive and on a par with something that a huge corporate, well, okay, I won't say huge, a medium-sized business would use. You could support over 1,000 users. You know, we have 17 workstations at the most. We're a district of about 30 employees. You know, this doesn't make any sense for this district. Something's really out of whack here, and I don't trust this vendor to move forward with them doing work for this district. I'm really uncomfortable with it, and I think at the minimum, we need to at least get some estimates from some other vendors, and I think that doing a survey of our current technology would be a very good idea. We need to get a baseline for what we've got, and we need to figure out a smart and intelligent way to move forward and not waste any more public money. So that's where I'm at with this. Commissioner Paravano? Okay.
May I comment?
No, the opportunity for comment is closed, unless you two want to hear from him, in which case I'm fine with it.
I just would like to bring up another concern that the district is currently also going through LAFCO review, and we've lost staff, and it's not the ideal solution to move forward and possibly pay more than we need to, but I think at this point we also have to take these things into consideration, that there's not a lot of time, there's not a lot of staff to deal with putting out an RFP and soliciting better offers. And I think putting the cap on what I suggested is not ideal, but I think considering all the other concerns that I voiced, I think that's the best way to go about it.
So I would like to just state that if we move, which we're not 100% sure we are moving at this point, if we move, the move would not be happening until the end of May. There is time to get other estimates. There's plenty of time. And throwing money around is not the solution. It's what this district's been doing for too long. We need to have some oversight, and it's the board's responsibility to provide the oversight. So I'd like to give this back to the staff and say, please bring us some other options from another vendor, from a couple other vendors. We don't have time to go out for an RFP. That's obvious, but we do have time to get a couple more estimates. In fact, a couple more estimates could be gotten for the move probably within 48 hours. We live in the Bay Area. This is, the peninsula. This is Silicon Valley. We are ripe with IT people. Look at how many showed up tonight that don't even want this work. These are just the regulars who always come to our meetings. The whole audience is full of IT people and one fisherman. It's just...
Who invited all these guys here?
They always come.
I've never seen these guys here before. I've seen you here before.
Please, I got a reputation to work on that.
I would really like to get some more estimates and consider this at the budget workshop. I think it would be a great time to consider this item again. So that's my suggestion.
Can we get feedback from staff on?
I'm looking for a comment here, just from the questions and comments that have come up. I'm sure that we can get quotes, estimates reviewed, done. I cannot guarantee that it'll meet the timeline of the move, but we will make our efforts to do so. At the same time, if we do that and we cannot get it complete, I want to be able to at least say on record that we tried. Because one of the things I noticed that was in Mr. Alm's quote, I think here, was the PPH finance desk. One of the things that has been very clear from our finance director is to have one station at the very least during the move operational at Pillar Point, so that we can at least maintain the finance office during a move, so that we're not stopping our operations. That is my greatest concern beyond the rest of it.
I'll volunteer to do that at no charge, as a public service. I can do it, I have the technical background, I have partners that I can draw to if I need to, and it's a technical no-brainer. I can say to you with a straight face, it can be done, and if you need someone to do it and you can't get an estimate or quote or bid that the board can act on, you can open it.
Is there anything else? No. Okay. I'm going to go to the next item, and we're going to backtrack because Martha is here. So we're going back to, item number 4, which is presentation from LAFCO.
Well, good evening, and my apologies for being late. In the 23 years I've worked for the commission and come to numerous meetings on the coast, I've never been late before, and now I know why I don't want to be late again. And I just have to say that I've not before been relieved to follow something drier than LAFCO. So, LAFCO is an acronym for the Local Agency Formation Commission, and under state law, LAFCO in each county in the state to regulate the boundaries of cities and special districts. The commission is an independent commission that consists of 2 county supervisors, 2 city council members, 2 independent special district member, and a public member, an alternate for each. And under state law, LAFCO adopts its own budget that is then apportioned in thirds, 1/3 to the county, 1/3 to the 20 cities, and 1/3 to the 22 independent special districts in the county. And LAFCO is required to adopt spheres of influence, which are the plan for the boundaries and governance of the cities and special districts in the county, regulate those boundaries through annexation applications, and then prepare municipal service reviews and sphere of influence updates, which is why I'm here today. The commission was due to prepare a municipal service review every 5 years for cities and special districts, and the recent civil grand jury report made a recommendation that LAFCO initiate one in the short term. And so the San Mateo County Harbor District is part of the local government community in San Mateo County that includes, as I said, 20 cities, 23 independent special districts, and about 32 county government districts. And of those districts, in terms of districts, something that's important to understand is there's two basic types of districts: independent, like yours, which is governed by locally elected voters, and then county governed districts, which is governed by the board of supervisors. There's also a few districts in the county that are governed by city councils.
Can I interrupt real quick? I see that both microphones are covered with.
Oh, I'm sorry. That was intentional. No, I apologize for that. So also, in addition to the types of independent versus county governed districts, you also have enterprise districts, which are districts that provide a service that lends itself to charging a fee, like park and recreation, water, sewer, and then many of the services provided by your district. And then there's non-enterprise districts, which include primarily police and fire, or healthcare districts, mosquito abatement, which provide a service that don't lend themselves to fees and are typically funded by property tax. And in the case of the Harbor District, because the district was formed before Prop 13, and it was formed to be countywide, when California voters approved Proposition 13 that basically changed the way property tax could be collected and distributed, it set a limit of 1% of assessed value countywide, and it redistributed property tax to all of the districts that were and cities and school districts that were levying property tax prior to Prop 13. So this district gets about $5 million a year in county property tax countywide. LAFCO is reviewing the sphere of influence for the district, which was first adopted in the 70s and confirmed in 1985, that the district should be dissolved and be absorbed by the county of San Mateo, and services would continue to be provided, but that it would be under county governance rather than independent local government. And since 1985, actually in 2000, LAFCO had additional requirement added, which was to prepare a municipal service review. So rather than just looking at what should the boundaries be, kind of a overview, LAFCO is required to do these municipal service reviews, which look internally at cities and special districts and look at financial ability to provide service, efficiencies, accountability, and transparency. And so the study that's underway right now is a municipal service review sphere of influence update, and it will take into consideration your audits, your budget, much of the work that's been done in hiring. You have a consultant you hired to look at the board dynamics that will take into consideration. And a report will be circulated that will be a draft report, much like environmental documents are circulated. The district will have the opportunity to comment, as will the county, as will the constituencies that you have, which include the countywide voters, countywide taxpayers, your constituency at Pillar Point, Oyster Point, and then, of course, the cities and other agencies that share boundaries with you. Just brief history for those who aren't familiar. The district was actually formed in 1933 and didn't become active for several years. And the original formation purpose was to operate a deep water port in Redwood City, to actually create and operate. And instead, the city of Redwood City did that. They have their own port commission. And the district became active in order to build a harbor of refuge at Pillar Point. Then in 1977, through a joint power agreement with the city of South San Francisco, Oyster Point was built and operated by the Harbor District under an agreement. And that agreement goes, I think, through 2025, I believe. 26, thank you. The district itself is subject to many laws, the enabling legislation, which is Harbors and Navigation Code, California Constitution, the Brown Act regarding public meetings, the Political Reform Act, and Public Records Act, and also the Cortese-Knox-Hertzberg Reorganization Act, which is what LAFCO operates under. And then, of course, you're subject to land use regulations and the Coastal Commission and the Environmental Quality Act if there's any projects that you undertake that require that. One of the things that I think the municipal service review was mentioned tonight in the discussion of your IT purchases, and I don't want this to I don't want it to be a perception that the municipal service review is some sort of audit in itself or inquisition. It is a state mandated study. It's not a proposal to dissolve the district. Certainly the review will discuss the adoption of your budget, decisions that your district makes, but I don't want there to be a perception that there needs to be any sort of decision-making that is geared around a LAFCO study. So you're an independent district and you make your own decisions based on the conditions that are going on. I also wanted to acknowledge that it's not any sort of criticism of your staff. The staff's been very helpful in watching kind of the changes that have happened. I would urge this commission to make some timely decisions about our own staff to hire temporary so that they can keep up with the work of the commission. And it's in particular the fact that this is not just a recreation operation, this is public health and safety. So I would encourage that that you make a hasty decision on that. The municipal service review looks at areas that are very codified, and so there's a real effort in writing the report to make it readable for your district, but also for the taxpayers and your constituents. And so the areas of consideration are growth and population projections, location and characteristics of disadvantaged unincorporated communities, which doesn't apply to, that's really geared more towards municipal services like fire and water and sewer. The present and planned capacity of public facilities and the adequacy of public services and infrastructure needs or deficiencies. And that, again, quite often focuses on sewer and water. But again, your infrastructure are your two marina facilities. The financial ability of the agency to provide the service, opportunities for shared facilities, which I think there are many because there are just many layers of government that you're sharing territory with. Accountability for community service needs, including government structure options and operational efficiencies. And that's where there will be discussion about what are the governance alternatives for the district besides the status quo of an independently governed district. And then any other matter. At the last meeting, when I presented in South San Francisco, Commissioner Caravano had the question about the sphere of influence and the fact that your district basically supplants the Coast Guard in terms of going out into the Pacific Ocean and providing rescue service. And one of the things to remember about the sphere of influence, whether it's coterminous and status quo, meaning no change, or whether it's that it should be dissolved, is the sphere of influence adopted by LAFCO does not hinder your district from providing the services that you were organized to provide. So it is a policy statement about some future organizational change that could be implemented. The municipal service review is being prepared by a consulting firm, and it will be circulated sometime in May, and that will be the opportunity for the district and others, as I said earlier, to comment. And I think that in the short and long term, it will be a good tool for your board and for any staff that comes aboard, and for the residents and users of your facilities to better understand what the district's purpose is and what another way of looking at the budget as you go through your budget adoption. The 2006 municipal service review made determinations about your debt that was very high at the time, it was about $19 million, and made recommendations for that. And since that time, the district has reduced the debt. So that's an example of how the municipal service review can be used as a tool. And that concludes my presentation. I'll answer questions if you have any.
I have a question. You mentioned May as the time for the draft to be completed. How long does the district have to respond to the draft?
It's probably about, 3 weeks total.
And would the district want to come and speak to the commission directly with the response? Is that typically what's done?
Well, the response is requested in writing so that it can be incorporated into the final report, just like with a CEQA document. And then, of course, the board and the community is encouraged to participate in the commission deliberations.
Okay. Is there any possibility that that meeting could happen at a time when, because I know their meetings are usually at 2:30 on a weekday, and their meetings also are on the same day as the Harbor District meeting. Is there any way that when they have that particular item that they could consider having it perhaps in an evening, not the same night as our meeting, but I guess we could move, I don't know if we could move our meeting or not, but I'm just wondering if there might be a way to schedule it where more people would be able to show up.
Well, the commission has had a practice of having meetings on the evening and sometimes on the coast side. I think because this is countywide, I don't know that it would be necessarily required to hold it on the coast, but I can convey to the chair that there's an interest in having the meeting sometime other than 2:30 on the third Wednesday of the automated month.
Thank you, I appreciate that. Do you have any questions?
I do. Thank you for your presentation, and thanks for clarifying that about the search and rescue with the Coast Guard. As you were going through the list of acts and agencies that we respond to or else are connected with, is the Coastal Act part of the regime that we have to comply with in terms of providing services or abiding and complying with the Coastal Act?
Well, the Coastal Act is development related, so any agency that's in the coastal zone that carries on any type of activity that's considered development is subject to the Coastal Act.
And I just point.
That's a fair statement.
So just to clarify, and maybe this will be helpful, Pillar Point Harbor, not Oyster Point Marina, but Pillar Point Harbor is 100% within the Coastal Act jurisdiction. So all of it is included in the jurisdiction of the Coastal Act because it's within the coastal zone. And Oyster Point Marina, of course, does not have, the Coastal Act has no bearing on Oyster Point.
And just one clarification is there is the Bay BCDC, which is the Bay Conservation
On the base.
Development
Commission.
And so it's kind of the Bay version of the Pacific Ocean zone.
So does those two connections, the BCDC and the Coastal Act, does that open up the link with the sphere of influence?
It doesn't change. It's something that LAFCO takes into consideration in terms of the land use and rules and laws that apply to the district. But there's no hierarchy of one, say, being more powerful than the other. They're related in that they both apply to the district, but there's nothing that I'm aware of in the Coastal Act or BCDC regulations that have anything to do with sphere influence.
One other thing that I thought of, and I probably can say this tonight, that my colleague, Commissioner Bernardo, is not here, but I remember in 1988 when the Port of Oakland wanted to deepen their shipping channels and they wanted to designate a dredge site 11 miles off the coast. And when I was president of the local Fishermen's Association at the time, and when we found out about that, we became very active in the process of showing people that, and the agency that signed off on this designated disposal site, that there's a commercial fishing harbor here, and having that designated as a dredge spoil site was going to impact the activity of the fish stocks and our ability to to have Pillar Point remain open. So we went through probably a 2-year battle through the courts, and eventually what got us on the winning side of this was that there was an agency, and I forget which agency it was, that came to our assistance, and they provided a connection that we have that's consistent. It was a consistency issue. That if another agency is going to do this and it's going to show impact on our ability to provide access for the public to a American trust public resource, that was enough for the courts to rule in our favor. So if that was that consistency issue that we had, if that can open up the sphere of influence, that I don't know if a lot of people are aware of something like that, we do. I guess what I'm saying is that we do have a sphere of influence that was enough that the courts were able to see that our influence includes going out to the ocean, harvesting resources and bringing them back for the use of the American public.
So if I could just, I think I can clarify by saying that the term sphere of influence is a very codified term in government codes that pertains to LAFCO versus other ways that phrase might be used when we talk about the maritime, either maritime or any other kind of industry or practice. So I don't think that there's a relationship necessarily between a sphere of influence and what the court might rule in terms of activities of different public agencies and how they affect each other.
Okay, I tried.
You have any questions?
Yeah. If I would ask you for 3 suggestions or 3 goals for the Harbor District to, in the future, potentially have or show some measurable success, could you? That would be within the LAFCO code where we would say this is something that will change that historical number of 0 for the sphere of influence for Harbor District.
That's really a product of the municipal service review. I mean, if you're asking what the Harbor District could do to have their sphere changed, and that is a pretty complicated question with the fact that it's a county-wide district that includes the exact same territory as the county of San Mateo that has a bandwidth, operates a marina. I mean, I don't want to get into the debate about whether or not the district agrees with the LAFCO sphere of influence, and I'm with the study being just now underway, I think it's more appropriate to wait until the municipal service reviews on it.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Is that on this item? So we have one speaker slip for item 4, and that is Leonard Warren.
Good evening. I have one quick comment in response to Commissioner David's question. And a primary focus of MSR is to evaluate efficiencies of government. And the way this district has looked for ways over the years to waste money doesn't make the district look good. So, the focus that we saw tonight on a previous agenda item regarding, is this an appropriate expenditure, I think is just the beginning of what the new board needs to do. You need to look at everything you're doing and find all the places where money is being wasted, and there's probably a lot. Something for you to think about.
Thank you. Okay, so now we are moving on to a presentation by, this is item 6, presentation by Fondini Partners, and we have Joe. Oh.
They just went outside the door.
We have Joe Falcone here.
Actually, given the late hour and everything, we will happily
back.
Come back at the May meeting to do our presentation. Because I think there's much more important stuff on the agenda.
Well, I don't know if we can get you guys on the agenda, so if you're willing to stay, I think you should do it
If you
now.
insist, we can do it.
Because it's so hard to get stuff, you
Okay.
know, you're here, do it.
Okay.
No, the cord's not very long, that's why the podium was on the other side, so you're not standing in the middle of the board.
Yeah.
Oh,
Sorry.
It's there, it's just kind of dark. It's there.
Time to crank it up.
It's probably warming up the light or something. It's getting brighter.
Yeah, it's showing up.
So sorry that I switched the lights on to get time, just to see if I can get.
Yeah. After all that talking, I'm going to start with a video, which I hope will have some sound.
Can we turn off the light? Is that okay with everybody?
All the way up?
Yeah, let's do it.
Oh, yeah.
You want it off?
On.
Now we want it on.
Whichever works for you.
No, that
That
works.
works.
You can see it, you can still see it.
So this is one of the videos we put together for salmon season last year. Opening up with this, and then we'll kick into the presentation and demo of what we're doing.
Number one question is, did you catch it last night and they're already selling it today? We tried to punch on the site, when we're going to be here and what the prices are, the different things that we have to sell. So we have people come down and buy off the boats, and we try to show you something about what's going on. And we try to be here every day that we can be here. In salmon season, most everybody that walks down the dock wants the small salmon. So they go kind of quickly. And today you can actually go out on a charter boat and experience what we're going through. Find restaurants that truly know that they're serving local fish.
See you all around, everyone. Have a good day.
So I'm Joe Falcone. I'm the CEO of Fishline and Levine Partners. Slide here.
Sorry. Not labeled.
Whatever works. To go into a little history, Fishline was started in 2012 at
Can we turn that
Harbor.
down? Thank you. Great,
Yeah.
thank you.
To promote off-the-boat salmon sales. It became the most popular feature in our coastside mobile app. In 2013, we got funding from the Morro Bay Cable Committee to develop a mobile app around Fishline. We presented at the Working Waterfront Symposium in Tacoma, and we became a top 5 seafood app in Apple iTunes. In 2014, we grew to nearly 30,000 seafood enthusiasts across all our media, expanded to 12 California ports, and we became the largest independent seafood marketing organization in the USA. And what I mean by that is, compared to Alaska seafood, Louisiana seafood, Carolina seafood, Florida seafood, we promote local seafood no matter where it comes from. An example of that is our Facebook page, and where we post things from, there's some from Japan, but we have recipes, news items,
We can push a button, and this picture from Pillow Point Harbor reached 800 people, in one day. Recipes reaching 2,000 people. This is something from San Diego. Grunion runs, and even things like got here the calendar that gives people information about what's in season in the state. Reached 1,500 people. So we've got a communications mechanism that can reach thousands of people very easily, very cheaply. And getting back to PowerPoint. We started out as an app. We turned into a program which consists of all these different pieces. The mobile app has nearly 12,000 downloads now. And I'll show you where those people are. 75% of American adults have smartphones these days, so this is a primary way of reaching people. And once you get on people's phone, it's an extremely valuable spot to be. We also have a website, a Facebook page, as I showed you, Twitter feed, YouTube channel, that's where that video was, and other social media outlets. Our impact since 2013, again, the scale is kind of amazing. We've processed over 130,000 queries for local seafood, and I'll show you what that looks like in a little demo. So that means over 1,200 a week on average. During crab season, that spikes way, way up. It brings the average way up. And early in salmon season, that goes way, way up as well. On our Facebook page, we've delivered over 1,300 posts and pictures to over 325,000 people. That's not a typo. And that's when you factor in people sharing information, posting it on other pages. Facebook's a pretty amazing, that's why they call it a social network. So I share something with you, you share it with your friend, they share it with their friends. Pretty soon, you reach 300,000 people. We average over a dozen posts and pictures a week, reaching over 3,000 people. When I showed you that Facebook page before, along the side there, you can see those numbers. So this post, whoa, hello. We'll get there again, I guess. Come on. Oh, it's great technology. Anyway, we got the post reach there. You can see 3,500 in this week alone. And with 6,000 total likes, those are our quote fans. Engagement on the bottom, that's 700 people who shared, commented, took an action with respect to a post. So it's a great way to get people to act upon information. As I showed here, our videos have been viewed over 5,000 times. We've done professional videos for both the crab season and the salmon season. And our estimated impact on off-the-boat sales is upwards of 25%. People say they came to buy seafood at Pillow Point Harbor because of Fishline. This is where people have downloaded. Actually, this is an older slide. There's even more dots now, and they're in all 50 states, including Alaska and Hawaii. And you might ask, why do people download an app that's focused on 12 ports in California when they're somewhere else? And there's one word for that, and that's tourism. Okay? And all you have to do is walk through downtown Half Moon Bay or Pillow Point Harbor, and you can clock the number of languages you hear and the number of accents you're hearing. We got people coming here from all over the world, all over the country. In terms of all over the world, this also blows me away. 101 foreign countries. People downloaded Fishline as well. So again, people love California. This shows you the seasonality. The peak day, we've had 355 people download the Fishline app. On average, 16 downloads per day over 2 years. So just think about that. So someone had to find out about Fishline, go into the App Store, push a button, probably have to type in a password to download the app, and 16 people are doing that every day, day in, day out. So that's a marketing juggernaut that keeps ticking over and over. And you can see our big spike during craft season. This is how our numbers break down. We've got 30,000 followers on apps and for Fishline, and then we have a collection of apps that are driven out of San Mateo County content and places, Fishline, Pacific Coast Dream Machines, Farmline, iPumpkin for the Pumpkin Festival, iCoastside for Hampton Bay, and iPacifica for Pacifica. You add those all up, and we touch about 60,000 people in San Mateo County and beyond. But basically, 60,000 people are getting to know San Mateo County really well through that. Now, I've had people ask me, well, who's paying for this? How did it come about and all that? In 2012, we went and we took the initiative and built the initial Fishline ourselves. 2013, we received $20,000 in funding from the Morro Bay Cable Committee and matched a bit of it ourselves. Last year, we got $10,000 from the Morro Bay Cable Committee and some sponsorships, and topped it up with the rest away ourselves. This year, the Morro Bay Cable Committee is spending all their money on lobbying, so we didn't get a grant from them this year. But our goal this year is to get about 1/3 from grants, 1/3 from sponsors, and 1/3 matching funds from ourselves. Grants and actually I'm kind of glad that we are talking about this today, because there are two important things going on right now that I may need the help of this board or friends of this board, and that is the National Fish and Wildlife Foundation just put out an RFP, a crazy 3-week deadline on it for electronic monitoring and reporting. We are taking a different spin on it. We're going to focus on charter boats and sport fishing because we already do the regular commercial fishing in Fishline. So we're seeking charter boat and sport fishing partners for this proposal. We would like, if it's possible, to have a letter of support from the Harbor District, but I understand the mechanisms for that. There may not be time to do that. Our deadline, the NFW deadline for a full federally compliant proposal is April 13th, which if you guys have ever seen what goes into these proposals, that's really aggressive. But we're reaching out. Dan Blick works with me on Fishline. He's reaching out to the local charter boat fleet to see if we can get some guys on board on this. Because having partners on board is key to the potential success of this proposal. Second thing is we're a finalist for the Fish Locally Collaborative Know Your Fisherman Nationwide Initiative, RFQ. We're proposing to expand Fishline nationwide and drive a content marketing and branding campaign to promote, and this is their language, small to mid-scale domestic commercial fishermen and their catch. So this is something that fits Flip Point Harbor perfectly. We're a finalist in this. We should be hearing about this pretty soon. By the way, the NIFWIP proposal, those are going to be funded June 1st. So this is a quick turnaround with $2 million at stake. $2 million is going to the Gulf of Mexico, and the rest of the country gets to split the other $2 million. So this is serious money here, and it'd be nice to have someone come to the coast side. The other third that we're hoping to get is more aggressively go after sponsorship, including possibly working with the Harbor District on that. So that brings up the question of what can we do for you? And first thing I'll do before I even go into that is, you haven't even seen Fishline yet. So this is the app as it looks on the iPad. And there's a button here that says Find Your Port. I'm going to click on Half Moon Bay, and you can see There is a wealth of information on here, photo gallery, links to other apps, weather, marine forecast, harbor map, fishermen, fine fresh seafood. I'll click on fine fresh seafood. And they're showing me halibut, abalone, crab going on. So, you know, I can look at those listings, call those people up if they have contact information. We can expand this. We chatted with Scott something about a year and a half ago about expanding this to include all of the content, all of the information that the harbor currently has on their website. And I mean, really actually covering everything. And doing a clone of this for Oyster Point as well. You know, even though Oyster Point's not a commercial marina, covering it anyway. Boats are boats, as it were. And people like, for example, you know, we have a surf forecast on here. They like having that, you know, and all that kind of stuff. And again, we've got the videos here as well, and radio station, etc. Getting back to the presentation then. So, first thing, we can expand the Pillar Point Harbor section of Fishline, include all the information present on the current website. And as you can see, we reach a lot of people. So,
could you talk just for a second about, because I saw some of the other apps and the image that was just there, about how this app kind of fits with the family of other apps that you've got going?
they all cross-promote. So we advertise Fishline on iCoastside, we advertise iCoastside on Fishline, Farmline, they all cross-promote each other. And when the Pumpkin Festival happens, we've got 10,000 people using that app. They all get exposed to Fishline and Farmline and things like that. We've got dream machines coming up. 1,000 of these Fishline bookmarks are going to be handed out at dream machines as part of the goodie bags. We did that last year as well. And the harbor has actually handed out probably a couple thousand of these, right? Yeah. They keep calling me and saying we've run out of them and we have to get more, things like that. So it's something as simple as a bookmark, and people love them. And it, you know, again, it's been a good partnership between us, and it's been an informal partnership between us, the harbor, and the local fishermen, and the Chamber of Commerce. You know, because they've been a part of it as well. So, you know, really it's talking about seeing if we can formalize things moving forward. As I said, add Oyster Point Marina to Fishline. This is something that people brought up on the side, which is, you know, overhauling our Harbor District website to make it possible for the district staff to manage the content themselves. And in the same token, that content will flow into the app. Improve communications via social media and other channels. In other words, basically do the same thing we're doing with our social media for Fishline for Oyster Point Marina and Pillar Point Harbor. Okay, so using social media, I've heard there are PR issues around Oyster Point Marina. We can help with those issues.
Question about that. So right now, as you well know, the Harbor District doesn't have any presence on social media. Are you proposing perhaps that your company could provide that service since we don't have the staff to do it?
Yes.
Okay.
And we have given Scott a proposal that included that in the past, of creating a social media presence for each harbor individually because they have different target audiences. And, you know, and basically taking direction from the board and staff as to what you want to do, and then going ahead and executing on that. And, you know, the term they use in this business is curating content. And that is making sure, if you go to the Fishline Facebook page, you'll see we do a really good job of curating content. We try to create a very balanced view, but we are unashamedly pro-local seafood, local American seafood. You know, and you'll see every week we try to have a picture of Pillar Point Harbor there, one of the fishermen on the boats, something like that. It's just, you know, we're boosting the coastside because we live here. We have our other apps here and everything. And it's just good for the overall economy. And then this is something that with all I felt like coming when I came up here. I was going to say, yes, the last thing you want is another IT guy standing in front of you, but I'm sorry, but the whiteboard, I think, has seen its day. I mean, it's cute, it's quaint and everything, but it would be nice to replace it with an electronic board, connect it up to the content we've got, rotate the fish for sale with the marine forecast, with the harbor news, with warnings, and all that kind of stuff, and have it be a real information board. You know, I mean, that the window real estate of the harbor master's office is pretty precious. It would be really nice to have like a general information board, like on a 40-inch, you know, I mean, not necessarily this big, but maybe like on a 40-inch screen that could really present a nice collection of information. And again, that's something we can talk about.
They're even doing that at the Fitzgerald Marine Reserve now. I don't know if you've noticed.
Yes, well, you go everywhere, they're doing that. Yeah, everywhere's got a TV screens like you got at the airport, you know, that are showing enhanced information, you know. And it's, again, we're planning on doing that at the Chamber of Commerce as well, putting up a display on the wall. So, it's, you know, it's, again, these are some ideas. We could do some more brainstorming in the communications committee, you know, but these are some of the ideas we have. And that's it. You know, we believe that we can be an effective communications partner with the district, and you know, we've enjoyed working on Fishline for 3 years now. It'll be 3 years at the start of the next salmon season, and thank you for the opportunity to present. And you know, I hope we can work together.
Joe, could you, just for the public's knowledge, could you explain a little bit about how the app drives seafood customers to buy fresh fish from the local fishermen and cuts down on carbon emissions because they come when they know the fish is available? Could you talk a little bit about that?
Right, so right on the first screen here, you see Find Fresh Seafood. I'll click on crab, right? And it tells me that 2 boats here have crab, and I'll click on one of them. And you can see it says the seabird, and it gives me their phone number as well. So I can call them up and say, hey, do you have any crab? Right, so I'm sitting in Fremont, or worse, Walnut Creek, and I say, do you have any crab? And they'll tell me, yeah, I got some. Okay, can you hold 5 for me? Okay, cool. You know, and then they'll drive over, they'll pick up their 5 crab, and everything's fine. So, you know, like, you know, when we started working on this with Jim Anderson was really an important part of coming up with all this. Jim doesn't reserve seafood like some of the other fishermen will do. But he said, you know, you need both, because you don't want people driving long distances here and coming up empty, you know. And so he tries to handle the people that don't plan ahead, and then you got the people that do plan ahead. And so we're kind of taking care of both by indicating, you know, what's available. We also view this as kind of a cheap, a poor man's traceability, because like if you're going to restaurants and the restaurants are saying they've got salmon, it's like, hold on a minute, there's, you know, what's going on, you know, with salmon, where are they selling the salmon from, where are they getting it from, things like that. We got a salmon book, salmon, who's selling? Okay, so Old Port Fresh Seafood Market. It'd be interesting to see where they're getting their salmon from. But anyway, we try to curate the stuff as much as we can to make sure that they're doing local. So they're cheating a little there, but we'll see. But in any case, it helps people identify when there's seafood available at the harbor. You know? And people, you know, I don't need to tell you guys. You go down there and everyone's there with their garbage bags full of ice and things like that. It's like a festival atmosphere. And you know, when Dan's been down there asking people, you know, about how they found out about it, and it's amazing how many people are like, oh yeah, we use Fishline all the time. You know, you got people there holding their cell phones and stuff. So it definitely does help. And like you said, carbon emissions, traffic. Do we need more cars coming over here for no good reason? No. And, we want people to have a good experience when they come over here. And the other aspect of this, as you saw, we post a lot of recipes. So a big problem today is people do not know how to prepare seafood. And, especially from the whole fish, but even from fillets, they just don't know how to prepare seafood. So one of our most popular things on the Facebook page is recipes. People absolutely love seeing how seafood is prepared. And we're really doing a big education function by helping people with that.
Great. You look like you have a
I
question.
have a question. So you are already receiving some support from other harbor districts or port districts?
No, as you saw from that chart, we are not. We made a similar proposal to the Morro Bay Harbor District, but down there, their view is they let all the discretionary funding be handled through their cable committee. And unfortunately, the cable committee this year decided to focus on lobbying the amendments to the Shark Act and the, what was the other thing? Oh, the new MPA.
So-
The new proposed MPA.
What kind of range for sponsorship would be helpful to you? What kind of range are you looking for?
Like I said, depending on what we're talking about here, it's really open. We're very flexible, and it depends on what you're looking for us to do.
And I think John has a question. I don't know if you were done yet.
Yeah, go ahead.
I was just curious, have you reached out to any of the fishermen marketing associations, since it seems like this benefits the fishermen the most?
Yes.
For support, and it seems like they would want to help out.
It would seem that way, but where we are, I don't know how else to put it, but Princeton Seafood is a sponsor. They're kind of a minor sponsor. Giovanni's Seafood and
The direct fishermen, the fishermen that this actually helps out, or their associations, they seem like they would want to help out because it's
absolutely. And
what I've heard.
I don't know what else to say.
Yeah, I don't know. I was just curious.
What I've heard, I can't speak for them, but I have heard from a couple of their members that they might be interested in contributing, but they really felt that the district needed to contribute too, that they were.
I'm not saying the district shouldn't.
Right, no, I know, but that was sort of
It's
the,
ultimately, they're the ones that are benefiting out of this. The district does too, because the people go to the restaurants and they go visit, they go kayaking or whatever.
Right.
But ultimately, the fishermen are the ones that are.
yeah. So
benefiting out.
from what I heard, they weren't opposed to it, but I think a couple things I'm thinking are, I would love to have you come with Dan to one of our communication marketing committee meetings so that we could discuss some of the district's needs, because I hadn't thought about how your company might be able to help out with some of the social media, and I'm really curious about that, because that's sort of a thing that we just haven't tackled and we clearly need to. And I think that the committee level is kind of a good place to brainstorm and then come up with ideas, and then maybe bring it back to the board with some sort of a proposal. I have been looking through some of the membership subscriptions and various things that the district is currently paying for, and it does seem like it might be a good time to refresh some of those things, and that's something the finance committee is concerned with, and we'll be talking to the staff about. It's a minor detail in the scheme of the district's budget, but there might be some places where we might not be spending our money as best we could. So maybe that's a possibility for some funding.
We can resurrect the proposal.
I remember the proposal.
The proposal, I really liked what you proposed, because the one thing that was really positive for the district was like right now, if you go to Oyster Point, weekend fishermen, the parking lots are packed. They're literally taking up areas to where most of the tenants would normally park, just to fit their boat trailers and the people that go with them with their cars and trucks. as well as Pillar Point. I think having the monitors we talked about, just like you were showing on there, the flat screens near the offices, or somewhere at Oyster would be a little different, but we'd have something similar set up to where it really provides a message, it provides a service to the fishermen, I think, and the public. And there's a lot of public recreational fishermen on both sides. And I think that the more information, not let alone people just buy fish.
Yeah, I agree. We need to improve our
and it really
communications.
modernizes. And one of the things we talked about in that proposal is also having some of our own quote-unquote advertising for our district in that rolling screen of a flat screen where you had your proposals going on and we could say slips available or something of that sort.
Lean sales.
Yeah, exactly. Just things going on in the district that are not hard to load, but basically something simple enough to say, you know, please check the harbor office for a slip or things of that nature.
Even things that, I mean, I'm wondering about another item, but how to convey to the tenants when there's important messages, because I know we put things in their bills, but they don't, some of them pay in advance and they don't read that stuff. So yeah, I think it would be a great method. So I think there's a lot of possibilities, and I definitely think it would be great for you guys to meet with the committee. Tom is a member, Commissioner Bernardo is a member of that committee, and he's not here tonight. So it's kind of up his alley too, being that he's a PR person. So I think that it'll be exciting to talk about it. But I'm interested in this letter that you mentioned. You mentioned that you could use a letter in support of is it a grant, or what are they calling it? The National Fish and Wildlife Foundation?
Yeah, it's they're going to be doing grants. And like I said, the deadline is April 13th, and it would be nice to have, there obviously is no time to sort of designate the harbor as a partner. And even it's not quite sure how it fits anyway. We really need the charter boats as partners since they're key to this. But it would be nice to have a letter of support, saying that we've been good to the harbor or something like that.
So
I think, because that kind of stuff is influential with the people that review these. They're going to be reviewing probably 100 proposals. I suspect. They say this is going to be very highly
competitive.
Very competitive. And anything that can help Little Half Moon Bay compete against, big ports up in Oregon. It's all going to be the usual suspects in applying for this money. And we got a chance to get some money for Little Old Half Moon Bay. So.
Is there a way that we could kind of pre-approve a letter? We would need to get some content worked out, not at this meeting. Is there a way that we could do that, because their deadline is April 13th, so we don't have
a ghostwritten letter of what they need and who it's to and everything that would help us.
Could we, as a board, is there interest by the other commissioners in approving a short supportive letter that could be drafted by Acting General Manager Scott Grindy with some help from the applicant? Is there support for that?
But we don't meet again until the 15th. How would that work?
Meaning we would be basically saying, yeah, write the letter and send it. We trust the general manager to just make it happen.
Okay.
Do we need to vote on that, or can we just give direction to do that?
This would be a letter from the acting general manager?
It could be from the district, yes. It could be from the general manager.
Your agenda is pretty broadly stated in terms of what the action is. You will not see what this letter says. The board is not being presented with the letter, so I think it'd be, but if you want to authorize your general manager to determine whether he sees fit to draft a letter of support, I don't know that he needs that necessarily, but you could authorize him to do that for sure. I don't think that's inconsistent with this item.
Okay, so I move that we authorize the acting general manager to write a letter in support of the National Fish and Wildlife Foundation grant that Fondini is applying for. Does that sound okay?
And we're hopefully applying for, together with some of the charter boat operators in the harbor.
In conjunction with local charter boat operators. Can I get a second?
A second.
Roll call?
No, I have questions.
Oh, okay.
I support the overall intent of Fishline. What bothers me in writing this letter that we have not seen is that in this presentation there are several components that would contribute to this grant application. You mentioned off-the-boat fish sales, you mentioned tourism, you mentioned recreational fishing, you mentioned charter boat fishing. And I can see where individually that there would be acceptance of such an application to NIFWIP. But when you group all these together, this could be contentious. And that's where, without seeing the language of the letter, this is something that could create a level of risk for the district. And I see, this reminds me of when in January there was a letter that was given to LAFCO by the board president, which was not approved by the commission.
The letter was approved.
And this letter went on to, and was given to LAFCO, and the idea that we're upsetting the order of sequence of events here is bothersome. I would much rather approve a letter that I am able to read before sending it off for a grant application. Just because of the components that you mentioned. And also, we do have a commissioner that is a charter boat captain. So that...
and we're trying to get in touch with them.
So that's where there very well could be, and I see this just for protection of everyone involved, that there could be some sort of a risk that could expose individuals, it could expose district, it could expose the grant application. So I would offer caution on how we proceed. Well, I completely support, doing this in a different way. Because the outcome is absolutely tremendous, and I've seen it, and I support your work and interaction, and also the fact that your genesis was here on your own. This came out of your own back pocket. I mean, that says a lot. So you stuck and stayed. And but the way that this next phase is a little murky for a government agency to continue. That's where I'm.
And I'm very disappointed in giving people, to put out the RFP March 24th with a deadline of 13. There's no government agency, at least in California, that can turn around, something that goes through regular parliamentary process in that time. Unfortunately, as we know, other states, other localities don't follow the same rules that we have in California. And so my concern is we're going to be going up against competitors in Oregon and Washington, Louisiana, New England, that are going to have full backing of harbor districts and cities and counties and state governments. And marketing associations and everything, and we're going to be kind of standing up there without a lot of support.
Yeah, I guess what I'm saying is that you don't need this, do you really need this letter in order to go through another year, or else, I mean, get past this deadline, and can you still continue with your work?
Well, we've been asked for about a year now, more than a year, to add charter boats to Fishline. And so when we saw this come up, I had a good look through it, and I looked at it and I said, well, our opportunity through this grant program is charter boats and sport fishing. And so that's really how, and it struck me that I was going to appear in front of you guys, and so I said, well, I'll put this in front of you, it's something to consider, and if you're willing to do it, and we can keep it toned down, definitely toned down. And also, we've been told Tom might be available before the deadline.
Might return.
And so, we could have Tom review the letter, have Scott sit down with Tom and review the letter before the 13th. I know that even that part of the process is irregular, but it's something we could do. I definitely do not want to send out something that the charter boat operators don't want, and that's why we're trying to meet with them.
So I think Commissioner David had a question or comment.
Peter, would it be a solution if you would be involved in the process as a commissioner and work with Scott and Joe and basically work on the letter and approve it?
That takes away from the responsibility of the commission as a whole. I'm acting on my own.
Well,
and I don't think that's a responsibility that I want to take on.
So I'd just like to remind the board that in the past, Commissioner Paravano has requested that letters be, at least one that I can remember very clearly, that letters be moved forward in drop dead deadline situations to try to help meet a goal that would be in the best interest of the district. So it has come up before where sometimes there are these deadline issues that the district finds itself enmeshed in, and maybe I wasn't clear about my thinking on the whole concept, but my idea for the letter was it would just be very high level. It would not specifically talk about what it is that Fondini is planning on doing, because we don't even know. It would just simply say that they have been a great partner and they've done excellent work and they've helped our local fishing community, and it would be that sort of generalization type of supportive letter. That's it. So that's kind of what I was thinking. Scott, what were you thinking if you were going to write a letter?
I guess I hadn't got that far yet.
Okay.
I was listening to all the input here.
Does that
more in the sense of,
sound like it makes sense to you?
to a point. I'm now cautious about what the concerns are, though.
Well, I haven't heard any concerns that make a whole lot of sense to me yet. I can't latch on to any of these concerns as specifics so that we could address them.
I mean, I'll tell you what NIFWF would want. NIFWF, with their evaluation criteria, they're looking for people to say, oh, by the way, when this program's over, we're willing to fund it and things like that. I'm not looking for that, but I know I'm going to be competing against that. Mm-hmm. I'm looking for at least you guys saying that I'm okay. Mm-hmm. That's really it, and that I'm maybe technically competent.
Like a reference, basically.
Right. It's like a reference, right? That I'm okay, we're okay with each other, we're cool, and things like that. Because that alone, at least, will carry some weight. Oh, he's cool, you're cool with him, that's fine. But the problem is, in the absence of a letter, in my past experience, and we did apply for the Fisheries Innovation Fund round that just went through, and we didn't get through to the finals on that. We didn't have such letters, and I think that had a negative impact on things. because we put together, I thought was an outstanding proposal. So this time around, I really think having a letter from our home board would really help.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Do we have any further discussion before we take a vote? Okay, can I get a roll call?
Commissioner Bernardo, Commissioner David.
Aye.
Commissioner Matoush, Commissioner Paravano.
No.
President Brennan.
Aye. Okay, so the motion passes. Next, we're going to go to, thank you for the presentation. That was great. Next, we're going to go to item 7.
Commissioner, could we maybe look at item 10, 11, and 14 probably first, just in case of concern of time? Yeah.
Well, we could just go ahead and extend the meeting. That would be a way to deal with it.
I propose that we go to item number 10.
Hold on a second here.
What was the other one, Mr.
10,
Grundy?
11, and 14, at least 10.
I need to use the restroom, so I propose that we take a 10-minute recess.
When you take a 10-minute, okay,
Thank you.
So what time are we meeting again?
25 after.
9:25.
Okay.
So I've been asked to announce that there is no longer a quorum of commissioners, and so the meeting is not going to be able to continue. Thank you.